And now, TSPN is proud to present Insights on Leadership and Life with your host, Roberta Pickett.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Roberta Pickett, and I'm your host for Insights on Leadership and Life. I missed last month because I was on vacation, but I'm happy to be back this month, and we're talking about a topic called character. We all know characters, but this is about having character, and I learned a little bit more about this topic recently when I heard Michael Josephson speak. He is the head of the Josephson Institute on Ethics, and he also runs a company called Character Counts, where he teaches character and provides facilitators to teach character to school students. And I thought, what an interesting topic for us to talk about here tonight. So with me this evening, I've got two people that, on good faith, have great character. Actually, I know one from experience and the other one from great reference. So our first guest is Jane Wilkinson. Welcome, Jane.
Thank you.
And our second is Gwen Christeson from here in Jackson. And welcome to you, Gwen.
Thank you.
So what I'd like to do first of all is to get a little bit of background information about both of you. Gwen and I just met tonight for the first time, which is fun. And but it's always nice to know where you're coming from. And it might help the audience to understand why I picked you to talk about this topic. And you're probably going, why did you pick me?
Whoa.
But yeah, it's interesting. So you want to go first and tell us where you grew up? What's your background?
Certainly.
What do you do now?
What do I do now? I was born in England and came to the United States when I was 6 years old and grew up in Detroit.
Oh, really?
Detroit was actually a very wonderful city back then when I was growing up, and schools were excellent, very highly rated. After high school, I went to college for a year and a half and then got married and moved to the Washington, D.C. area. From Washington, D.C., moved to California. My first husband, had a little bit of a change of heart and a parting of ways, and so myself and my son remained in the Walnut Creek area where I met my present husband, Tom. And, excuse me, we then embarked on the great adventure of moving to Amador County. This great adventure. That was 35 years ago. And prior to that, we had come, we have a property up above the 4,000 level, and we would camp on the property and grew to be very much in love with Amador County. So we came here, no store, started the business from scratch. It was in the basement of the building, and a converted garage that you drove down to, and we...
And what kind of business?
The plug. Upcountry Pool Center, which is... I came up country when we came here, so everything was printed, all my paperwork was done with the state, and first month everyone said, why are you Upcountry Pool Center? You're not upcountry.
You're in Jackson?
Welcome to Jackson. And the other question was, so how long do you think you're going to last?
Oh, dear.
Yeah, and then the third one, where's the man, if I was the only one in the store. So coming from the big city, the Bay Area, Washington, D.C., and Detroit, this was quite the eye-opener coming to Jackson. We proved them wrong.
Survived.
We survived. We've been here for 35 years. They now ask for me and not the man. So I did prove that I can do a few things. I never thought I would be running a swimming pool retail and service store. My ambitions were a little different. I was always very much interested in the outdoors. I love hiking, snowshoeing, skiing, you name it. I'm there's so much to offer around here. And I think at one point it probably would have been teaching, something like that. I was very comfortable with that. But life takes you where you go. It provided an opportunity for my son to be raised in a wonderful county, good schools. I was able to be there and work. So best of both worlds. And always volunteered in the schools. I was active through the elementary up through the high school, and then took a break when he went to college. And since then, I've always tried to keep a little something going. So I was on the Jackson Revitalization Committee for a number of years. When my term came up, I had been approached to serve on a board of directors at my cabins. And I don't do well having too many irons
obligations.
In the fire. Thank you. Too many obligations. I figured I'd stick with one. So I retired from the revitalization for now, and I've been very happy working on the board of directors. And I know for a fact that when I do eventually retire, I will always have my finger in something. I enjoy it. I enjoy meeting people. I enjoy being able to help in some manner.
Well, I have to say, our family has a cabin up at Bear River Reservoir as well, and you're the president of the organization the last several years, and you've done an excellent job, and I just want to commend you for that. In fact, it was because of how you handled some of the situations that I saw in that environment that were difficult that I said, this is a woman I want on the panel. Seriously, that is why, because of how you've handled yourself and the organization. It speaks to your character. So,
well, thank you so much.
Welcome, Jane.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Well, so that's a little bit about Jane. How about you, Gwen? What's your background?
Well, I have only been here in Amador County about 11 years. I went to, I was born in the Bay Area and graduated school in Oakland.
Okay.
And then moved
on the other side of the bay.
Yes. Well, I was born in Palo Alto, but lived in Oakland for a long time and graduated high school from Lafayette. And then went to UC San Diego, and I met my husband there, and we lived and worked in San Diego for a few years. I went to law school down there. And then just before we wanted to start a family, we decided we wanted to be in Northern California. But I thought maybe that would be back to San Francisco, or my in-laws are in El Dorado County, so we thought maybe we'd move there. And but we found Amador.
How did you find it? I'm curious.
My husband has a family cabin in Sonora, or by Sonora. It's actually Strawberry, Pinecrest area. And he was driving the old roads 49, and he picked me up at the airport and said, I want to take you to this place called Jackson. So I had no idea that I would live here and work here, and but it's actually been a great place for us. We moved up here just before we had my son, and I live in Pioneer, so we're right at snow level, just enough to get enough snow, and I ski a lot at Kirkwood, and the kids ski with me at Kirkwood.
Oh, good.
But my practice is here on Main Street, Jackson.
And what kind of a practice is it?
Well, I do estate planning. So I'm an attorney in town, and I specialize in helping people with their wills and trusts. I do have to go to court from time to time. When I was a new attorney in San Diego, I thought I would never see the inside of a courtroom. But here in Amador, it's a small town, and cases come up that need to be in court, and so I've ended up being in court the last 10 years as well. So I do both the drafting and the court process. And then we bought an old building 2 years ago in Jackson and fixed that up, and we've had a lot of fun revitalizing Main Street.
Yeah, you're right on Main Street, aren't you?
We've been fixing it up. We started with the bottom floor, and then this summer we've been on part 2 of the upstairs renovation. So just feeling like even more part of the community, just making those improvements. So.
Well, that's great. And you, as I mentioned earlier, I hadn't met before, but as I was talking around to folks, and particularly about this topic, I was saying I'm looking for somebody to be on the show, and your name kept coming up. So I thought, well, I don't know her yet, but there must be something there. So that's, I have to give you a lot of credit because that speaks very well of your reputation. And
well, it's interesting because right now I'm also on school board, and I also sit on the board for Resource Connection, and then also just run my business. And then I'm involved with the kids at their school. I volunteer for all the field trips. I like to see who they're hanging out with and who their teacher is.
It is. It's the best way to do it, to be with them and for them to see you involved, I think is also an important part of your role modeling for them in those regards as well. So, excuse me. Well, I love meeting both of you. Welcome, Gwen, as well. So we're going to continue as we get into the next segment. I want to play a little bit because I haven't done this on the show before, so you guys, you're our guinea pigs. Isn't that fun? Yes. But I want to do a little playing with this idea of character and what it means, and we'll see what happens. If it's a bomb, it's a bomb, but I think it'll be fun. And, I really think character is really important. I just think, as I think about our country and our community, what makes it important to be here? Both of you have said you've enjoyed living in this community. I think part of it is the character of the people, the kind of people that we have here. And I would like to think that our country has that. It feels like there's been times when that feels like it's eroding. So I think it's an important topic to talk about, figure out what does it mean, at least for some of us, and figure out where we go from there. So let's take a little break, and we will be back in just a couple of minutes to talk more about insights on leadership in life. Thank you.
You're watching Amador County's local television network, TSPN.
Welcome back to Insights on Leadership in Life. I'm your host, Roberta Pickett, and I'm here this evening with Gwen Christeson and Jane Wilkinson. Those are a mouthful, you guys. Yes. And we're talking about character this evening. So we are going to do a little experiment, if you will. When I heard Michael Josephson speak on character, he talked about what he called the 6 pillars of character, and he said these are the traits that people of character have, and they transcend different cultures. That each culture may have a slight different definition for them, but the characteristic themselves seems to be consistent. So I thought it might be kind of fun to play with it and see if we come up with similar things as we go. And the question that he asked was, if you were to think about the kind of person that you would want, either a son or a daughter, or a niece or a nephew, somebody close to you to get hooked up with or married to, what would be the traits that that person has? What are the kinds of things that you'd want to have in a person that's going to become part of that family, right? So what might be one of the first things that you think about?
This is the first time I thought about it because my children are 7, 9, and 11.
You're like, oh my gosh, I don't want to think about that yet.
And we've already told them they can't date until college, so I'm not sure how that will go. But I will draft a prenuptial agreement for sure. But I thought a little bit about it, and you see the difference. I lived and worked in San Diego for a number of years and then moved up here. And when I look at the colleagues I worked with in San Diego versus the colleagues I work with now, there's a difference in that level of prestige or what you're working for. When you drove out of the law firm parking lot, there were BMWs and Corvettes and all of that, whereas now it's perfectly acceptable to show up at Amador Superior Court with a Honda or something else, a Subaru for that matter. So the looking at do they need to have money, really it doesn't resonate as much with me as that they need to be hardworking. I really don't want someone just being too cool or too relaxed, but I would want someone hardworking. It's not that they have to be an attorney or a doctor, but I would want to know that they're really good at what they do and that they're working.
So hardworking and good at what they do.
Because there's pride there. When you're good at what you do, it's because you take that extra time and effort, and you have that work product or that.
Absolutely, and that fits very nicely with these little characteristics that I've identified right up here, which are the 6 pillars of character that Josephson identified, one of which is responsibility. And I think that's what you're saying, hardworking, that the person should care about, have something that they do and be good at it, whatever it is, right?
And that's part of the happiness factor.
Yeah.
If they're going to take care of my son or daughter, they're going to be happy about what they're doing on a daily basis. And
yes. How do you, that's that whole other topic is what constitutes happiness. But part of it is having something that you do that brings joy back into your life, that's fulfilling. So, great. Okay.
You're up.
Jane, you're up.
Wow.
Hard worker. What else? What would
Besides
you
the
want?
hard worker?
Yeah.
I like somebody that is responsible, punctual, respectful. It's not asking too much. These are all very quiet characteristics that can show through. They don't have to boast about it. It's just something that emanates. Correct my word.
That's the right word.
The respect is important, because if they are respectful of themselves and of the family that they are working their way into, whether it be by marriage or as a son-in-law, and a willingness to share their background so that it can merge well into the new family that they would be entering into. I'm getting very broad here. But
Well, what I heard there was a little bit of adaptability as well. Yeah, so looking at that, you definitely pointed out
the respect. That's very important.
And it's a two-way street.
It is.
I mean, it's so important that you show respect to others, as well as be respected by the people that you're working with. And to me, if you're only going to be respected if you're doing things that bring respect, right? I mean, you have to earn it.
It's a confidence on both parts. If there's a confidence within yourself that you are putting forward your best, that can be perceived by other people, and usually other people will reciprocate upon that. If they see that you're trying to make an outpouring of whatever you want to proceed with, they will come back with that. When I was looking up, I should say, what is character, one of the things that stuck in my head, and I saw it repeated a couple of times, was doing the right thing when no one is looking. And it's so true. If you can perform from within without worrying about whether you're getting kudos and all the other stuff, your true character will come out. And that stuck in my head when I was looking through things.
Yeah, that to me speaks to trustworthiness too. Are you trustworthy? Can people count on you to do the right thing at any time?
At any time.
I teach a class on ethical decision making, actually, for the Franchise Tax Board.
Oh.
And
you do have to be honest with them. Believe you me that you have to.
And I always say, are you doing the right thing when your mother's not watching you? If your mother knew you were doing this, would you be okay with it? Because it's that same sort of thing. It's like, ooh, could I really be okay if Mom saw me doing X? or somebody else that you care about. But it's that trustworthiness. And definitely for somebody you're having a relationship with, can you trust them? Are they doing what they say they're going to do? Are they going to follow through on their commitments? Are they going to be someone you can count on for the rest of your life? It's a huge piece of a relationship.
I honestly feel that I have remained in business for 35 years because I have never been dishonest with a customer. Sometimes to my detriment, if I tell them I've had people ask me to do something, bring something in, and if I feel it is wrong, I'm going to be right out front and say so, and rather than get their couple $100 for something.
Yeah.
And it pays off because they come back. They come back, they know that they will receive honesty. And the same within some member coming into your family. The trustworthiness is big. It's at the top, and I think it should be.
And what an important trait to be able to say the tough truth, right?
Yes.
Because in relationships, as we know, that it isn't all roses, wine and roses every night.
Really?
So you have to be able to get through those tough times, to be able to talk about what's not working as well as what is, or what you really want that maybe hasn't been created yet, that to move forward in the relationship. It's very important. Good.
Well, and I see it a lot in my profession as well. I counsel people all the time about who they want to act for them if they become incapacitated or upon their death. And we always have to have a conversation about who would be trustworthy. And we all know that people all have their strengths and weaknesses, and so sometimes we have to have some very difficult conversations about this person just really can't handle the situation, and then what can we do?
I actually have I'm going to be meeting with you
very soon. I saw that on the calendar.
And it is a hard thing. I mean, you think about, I think immediately, our kids, but you have 3 of them, and then which one do you choose and why? It's a horribly difficult decision.
It is, and
they're not
people who don't have children, or they have children that are too far. It's harder as well, because you really do have to know that you have someone that you can trust.
Okay. Well, let's see if we can come up with a few more traits. We have just a couple of more minutes, but let's see if we can come up. What else would we want in a...
And someone coming into
come into our family. Yeah. You're
money.
Cheating.
Some money.
Look at the notes.
Oh, look at the notes.
Cheating's okay in this regard.
Well, we have really touched on quite a few. The citizenship, no, we haven't really.
That's an interesting one. What do you think that means?
I was thinking it more of a member of the community, especially up here. We see that a lot here in Antioch County of what are they working towards, or what are they involved in the community.
Do they care enough to give back? I think that's an important factor. I love that idea of people not just all about themselves, but being willing to contribute to, whether it's the small community or to something greater in our county, state.
It's small enough that we're still able to feel that by getting to know people that are in politics or in the city, working for the city, that getting to know them, getting their feedback, and so that they will listen to you. It's been quite the eye-opener here as to how accessible it is.
And speaking up, being willing to speak up, to give your voice, to add it to the community conversation. So that was a great start. We're going to talk more as we get into the next segment, but we're going to take another commercial break and be right back.
You're watching Amador County's local television network, TSPN. And now back to Insights on Leadership in Life with your host, Roberta Pickett.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Roberta Pickett, and I'm your host for Insights on Leadership in Life. And this evening, we're talking about the topic of character, what it means to have character, and what are the traits that someone of character usually demonstrates. So with us tonight are Gwen Christeson and Jane Wilkinson, and in this segment we're going to focus on Gwen for a second.
I'm in the hot seat.
You are in, it's emanating, to use that word again. You are an attorney. So, as you can imagine, I did have several people when I was talking to them about this show tonight, and they said, "You're going to have an attorney talk about character? Are you crazy?"
What's the big idea?
Yeah, so I'm sure you've never heard that joke before. But yeah, you came very well recommended to this show. That obviously that's something that you do demonstrate in your workings with people. So kudos to you.
I'm proud of that.
Yeah.
That sounds really good.
That's really, it is a good thing. So, you know, when you think about being an attorney, and we talked about, or we identified these 6 traits of a person of character: trustworthiness, respect, responsibility, fairness, being fair, being caring, and citizenship. As an attorney, which one jumps out for you the most?
Well, for me, trustworthiness was the most important. When I worked in San Diego, I never saw my clients. I worked for big corporations, and I worked for other attorneys that told me what job to do. And so here, having my own practice, I have to work for people that walk in my front door. And so
face to face, eye to eye.
We sit down at the conference table, and I have to answer to them, and I have to be trustworthy enough. I have to make sure they have trust in my abilities, and I have to be able to tell them what their rights and responsibilities are. My biggest job is to make sure they have the information they need. A lot of times they want me to make decisions for them, and I can't do that. All I can do is make sure they have all the information that they need.
Well, that's trustworthiness, but it's also responsibility. You're stepping up to that. I need to make sure they have what they need, and that's your responsibility to pass that information on to them, right?
For sure.
Yeah.
And then also the trustworthiness, the other joke that goes along with that is people always say, well, this is confidential, isn't it? And so it's always that idea that they are trusting me with information that they wouldn't just tell anybody. And so it's making sure I guard that information too.
Especially when it comes to, I mean, because you're doing estates and wills, that sort of family. Family
you learn a
trust.
lot about the families.
I bet. Family interactions and how they work, and I think just talking about money with people, it's a difficult thing. Not everybody is comfortable talking about money.
They aren't, and they don't always want to talk about money with their friends or their children.
Even with their family.
And so a lot of my job is mediating or identifying and making sure I can walk them through that process. And so it's really just that communication, being able to communicate also with them. And that's one of the reasons why people don't do estate plans. They think, oh, I don't want to handle that. I don't want to tackle that issue. But especially now we have a lot of blended families, and we have to recognize who everybody is in that family and where those strengths and weaknesses are.
So, you know, my background is as a coach, right? A life coach and a leadership coach. But I think about what the kind of work you do. In a lot of ways, you're coaching them as well. I mean, that's a big piece, especially in your role as a small town attorney. It's that face-to-face. It's coaching them to make sure that they are doing the right things, that they've got the right information, that they're moving forward so they can make the right choices for themselves.
That's very true.
Yeah. How does caring fit in?
Well, caring, as a estate planning attorney, I work with people every day who have just found out that they're dying of an illness, or they've just had a loved one die unexpectedly, or just lost a loved one. And so the caring part comes into just stopping the busyness of legal and documents and just being there and being supportive.
Being with their humanity. Yeah. That's good. And I would imagine that isn't true with I shouldn't say that, but our image of attorneys is not that they're always
the Hollywood version, the TV version, the movie version,
which is I'm sure so accurate, right?
Some of them are actually. But
what about the responsibility between clients and customers? Do you is there a responsibility on both sides that you see?
I think so.
You obviously have one to your clients.
Mm-hmm.
What about their responsibility back to you?
Well, the State Bar manages attorney performance as far as conduct and professional conduct rules and things like that. So if I don't get back to someone within a reasonable time, or there's ways to grade your performance, almost like a report card of have you fulfilled those duties.
But that's only one way.
That's right, and just like any other profession, you choose who you want to work for.
Yeah.
And especially here, every once in a while I have had individuals who I've had to decline to represent for one reason or the other. But you do a service too, and so it's making sure that those that you can meet the needs of that person. If someone called me for a divorce, I would say, no, I can't help you there, but here's some other individuals that could help you. So a lot of it, too, is just knowing where your boundaries are, where your strengths and weaknesses are, and if you really can help that person with what they need help with.
Yeah, it's a good point, because technically, and this is a question, technically, could you help someone with their a divorce, technically?
Technically, you can. When you take the 3-day California bar exam, you're tested on everything from the elements of murder to what a board of director has to know.
Right.
So you're tested.
You could.
But what happens with the back to the professional conduct of an attorney, you need to be well versed in that field. And so, estate planning, I do a lot of business work as well. So there's some overlap. But other attorneys, they won't have an overlap. They'll specialize just in patent law or just in criminal law.
My nephew is a patent law attorney, yeah. So what else in terms of character do you find pops up? I mean, I think character is just such an important factor, whether to me, our leaders, in our communities, in our country, should have these characteristics. They should be people of character. And attorneys and doctors and our teachers, this would be my hope, that everybody portrays these and really lives these. What do you see around you? Do you see that it's prevalent, or do you see it's lacking? What's your perspective?
Well, we all choose who we want to be around.
Well,
that's part. So it depends on who you're with that day. But I see it a lot with my children. My children, I've got 2 girls and a boy, and one of his favorite shirts this summer, it says "perfect role model" across the top. And it was the perfect shirt for him, because ever since he was a little boy, I would tell him, be an example, be an example. And a lot of that was because he was the oldest, and I wanted the little girls to see what we expected. But it's true. When you hold yourself out to be a person of character, you want to be trustworthy, you want to be responsible, and you are setting an example. And so I see that a lot with my children, of what are they doing and what would I expect from them.
It's an interesting thing, as you were talking, I thought you're so right, and it's a choice we make in terms of how we be, so to speak. And yet I think about going back to kids. It's like, oh, that's no fun, So what's the fun factor in being a person of character?
Well, the fun factor is it's that high regard. When my kids come home with a big certificate,
that's great.
Or even just tonight, you said, well, you came highly recommended.
Yeah.
That's really what speaks speaks the most.
Yeah.
I was voted best best attorney in Amador County by Ledger voters, and that felt really good because you don't pay my state bar license fee every year, but I don't know how I'm doing otherwise. So it's just those types of things that come back.
There's an
and remind
intrinsic
you.
reward then that you get from it.
For sure.
Interesting. So, excuse me. Do you have a creed or a motto that you live by, or something that really resonates with you?
You know, I don't know if it's so much a motto, but my faith. I do believe in God. I do believe that I serve God with serving my clients. I want to be a good Christian, and there's a lot of stewardship requirements there of how you treat your things and treat people. But that is the most important to me. It's just my faith and making sure that I fulfill those obligations too.
So interesting to me. I've over the last 6-7 months that I've been on this show, how often that comes up, and I really didn't anticipate it. I'm a person of faith as well, but I really didn't expect to hear it so frequently as I do, and it actually makes me feel good that is a driver for people. That we have, not just to ourselves, but to something bigger, much bigger. Well, we are just coming up on our next break, but any last words that you want to say?
Well, I'm glad that you brought this topic up. It's great to sit back and talk about it and think about what kind of examples are we being and what our role is here in the community. So I appreciate you.
Well, good. Well, I appreciate you being here, and I really want us to be able to talk more about character, have more in our community. We'll be right back as we take a commercial break. Thank you.
And now back to Insights on Leadership in Life with your host, Roberta Pickett.
Hello there. I'm Roberta Pickett, your host for Insights on Leadership in Life. We're talking this evening with Gwen Christeson. I'm getting this mouthful here. Gwen Christeson and Jane Wilkinson about character and what it means to be a person of character at home, in a business situation, in social circumstances, really in any circumstance. And so we're going to switch over from Gwen. Thank you, Gwen, for your segment, to Jane. And totally different background.
Yes.
I mean, Gwen is an attorney. You have a small business. You're a small business owner. And how does character fit into your world?
There were a number of things that you touched on, Gwen, that made me think of character. And one is my upbringing. I feel that, and you brought up the faith. My parents instilled in me honesty, the truthfulness of. I found money in the phone booth once. I came running home with it, but I got probably 75 cents of even that. That was a time of nickels and dimes for the pay phones. And the first thing my mother said was, well, you take it to the church and put it in the poor box. And it was like, oh. But it was a lesson. It was a lesson.
Yeah.
And it stuck with me. And I always checked phones. Kids always do. Always checked them back then when they used to have pay phones. And I never would have kept it after that. And it was instilled into me that money was not yours, and therefore put it somewhere where it can go to good use. So what I was taught as a young person, and then when I became an older person, what I was able to instill into my child so that it would go out and be spread to other people as well. His character was very important to me.
Mm-hmm.
And
yes.
I could see that he wanted to please, which was a good thing, because then he realized that there are responsibilities in life. And I was never ashamed of him.
You know, it makes me realize the power of parents.
Yes.
And the importance of parents.
Yes.
That our parents people who are parents to be people of character, and how important that role modeling is. You mentioned it with your children, and you mentioned it as well, and you mentioned it that you got it from your parents, and the power. We learn by example, so good example or bad example.
Yes.
That's very interesting.
And as for business, that's where real character comes out.
You've seen the good and the bad, huh? And the ugly?
And the ugly. Both my husband and I have always volunteered. When we came up here, my husband had never been a fireman, but he volunteered for the Jackson Volunteer Fire Department. And I became involved in that through him, something that he gave back very readily to the community. He joined the Lions Club. I did, as I mentioned earlier, I went into the school aspect of it because I was very comfortable. I enjoyed that, and did the Just Up and school site council in the high school, and I feel that my input was well received. So that was a good feeling. It was a very good feeling, and I did not do it for any kudos. It was because I felt a need for
Goes back to that citizenship.
Yes,
there's a part of
and I don't know where that came from because my parents
contribution.
were not involved in that.
And I think citizenship, though, to interrupt you, excuse me,
sure.
is giving back, but it's also doing what's right for, not just for yourself, but doing what's right for this community or whatever community you're referring to. Because we see that a lot, that people do things for themselves, for what's good for them, it's going to benefit from them, but it not necessarily then going to benefit another group of people or a larger group of people. And that's disturbing to me. I know it can't always be fair, even though fairness is on the board too as one of the traits, but it's a consideration if all you're always thinking about is yourself.
Right. You can't exist just on the me wagon. And in business, I mentioned earlier that is why I feel that we have lasted for the 35 years. It's working with the public. Yours is a very serious profession. Mine is more of a fun profession. When they come in there, I am selling them happiness. I am selling them
beach balls.
Right, jump in the pool, have a good time. And so my job, one of it, besides calming them down and telling them that, yes, you will have a nice blue pool, even you did everything wrong and it's green, but yes, you will have a nice green pool.
You only want green water in the ocean.
Exactly. But it is that they can enjoy what they put all of their hard-earned money into. And so I need to boost their enjoyment level of the swimming pool. And it's very hard sometimes. You constantly are trying to get someone on board with what you would like them to do. They want a miracle, and of course you can't perform the miracle. So being honest and just straightforward and giving them the options. And most people will respond to that. They look at it as a guide, and they're happy to go about pouring a couple $100 worth of chemicals into it. Not that bad.
But there's sometimes, too, I would imagine that you run across people who just come in rude or, angry. And you're just one little retail store, right?
And oftentimes they're not angry at the store or myself. They're so angry with what's going on with them.
But it's coming out as anger or rudeness or frustration. And so how do you deal with it? How does a person of character who's receiving maybe some of this negative energy...
You have to ask them, what would you like to do? What can I do? What is your suggestions? And then they realize they have none. a lot of times. Or they just need to get the anger out. Once the anger is out, then they realize someone's listening to them. A lot of people just want to be listened to.
So true.
It's very hard sometimes to give up the spotlight of talking and let someone else speak. And that was one thing that I learned way early in dealing with my customers, is to let them have the floor. Let them tell me everything they want to do, and then ask them the questions and get more information from them. And they feel comfortable then, because it's I'm showing that I am concerned, and I'm willing to listen to what they have to say. That was, I made my son work in our store. And he did silly things like stocking shelves when he was younger. And once he was in college, every summer he came home and worked in the store. When he went to get his master's degree at Berkeley, one of his professors told him that he probably had some of the best education for his degree with working in a family-run store. His degree was in economics, and he worked for the SANDAG, which was San Diego Association of Governments. And
interesting.
So he would present and have to do speeches in front of all the different segments of the San Diego county area. And he said I could tell sometimes when he'd look out at the audience and he was talking to blank faces. They'd already made their mind up.
Right.
And he drew on his background, which was how to deal and get their attention, so that they're not just focusing on themselves and what they want to say.
Sort of cut through that wall and actually let them feel like he was speaking to them.
Speaking to them. So, again, the learning experience of working in a family-run business was opening up some characteristics or character traits that did help him throughout his adult life as well, and things you don't realize that will make sense down the road. Eventually come to fruition, and it's amazing. Yeah, it's always good.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I remember I have a stepdaughter, and she was a little handful, little pistol, and she was a tough one, and it was very hard as a stepmom dealing with some of her anger and things, and later, as she got into her early adulthood, and she was with her boyfriend, and they were going to be, they were having a little, spit, and I said, well, what are you going to do? And she goes, Mom, you never gave up on me. I'm not giving up on him. But it was that moment, that same thing, because you don't always get feedback, right?
Yeah.
Especially from kids. But in that moment, I went, she noticed all those times when I felt like I was going to go crazy, but I bit my tongue and I said what I should to make her feel the love and not the frustration. Yes. It pays off in the long term.
Right.
So character is something that really makes a difference in our lives, in our businesses, in our relationships. And I really want to thank you to both Gwen and Jane for coming on tonight.
Well, thank you for
the time
asking.
always goes too fast.
Yeah, thank you for it was enjoyable.
That I'd love to say, but any last things that you would like to add as an ending statement? I
think that I came here not knowing exactly what we're going to talk about, and am quite surprised as to how much character plays a part in our lives. And
it does. And I really do appreciate both of you again for being here. Come back next month for Insights on Leadership in Life. Thank you.